Hello and welcome to our webinar on Employer of Record Services for universities in the UK. Now, in terms of introductions, my name is Andrew Fahey. I'm the CEO of the Briars Group. I've been in and around outsourced professional services now for over 20 years, focusing on international expansion for the last 4 or 5 years and helping both public and private sectors with their workforce strategies.
I'm Stefan Dunn, the Transformation Director at Briars. It's my role to ensure that Briars and its customers has the right technology, the right processes and the right automation in place for us to deliver those services to those customers. Likewise, lots of experience working with the public and private sector, whether that be international expansion, outsourcing in payroll, HR, and accountancy services. So a little bit about Briars. Briars at heart are professional outsourcers, delivering outsourced payroll, HR, and accountancy services to its customers, and we've been doing this for over 30 years. We act as a trusted partner, so we want to feel like we're part of your team. And we've done this for various organisations across the public sector and the private sector. We've supported globally just over 3,000 clients throughout those 30 years, and we've always provided that personalised high-touch service. So we're not a tech-only provider. We will not just leave you to go on and deliver services just through technology. And likewise, we have technology to aid and personalize that service. So you will have a dedicated account manager, and we deliver those commitments to you via technology. We are recognized on the NWUPC framework, and we're really proud that we've achieved this earlier on in 2025, working with lots of universities and lots of other public sector organisations in delivering employer of record services. So why has this framework been developed? We recognise, and the framework providers recognise, that UK universities specifically employ staff overseas, whether they're for short-term roles, whether they're for long-term roles. The universities have spread their wings outside of the UK. And that creates a bit of a complex regulatory minefield for universities to navigate, whether that be tax, social security, benefits. All of those different countries have different employment laws and regulations that you need to follow. There's reputational and ethical pressures on those entities as well, and it's really important that institutions do stay compliant and provide a transparent way of working and delivery of those models to staff that they employ, both in the UK but also outside of the UK as well. And we always also recognise that the framework and needs to be flexible. So EOR providers need to be agile, they need to be compliant when hiring outside of the UK or anywhere.
Now, when a business thinks about the global talent strategy, there's a whole plethora of terminology and jargon that suddenly gets thrust upon you. And even though we're going to focus today primarily on EOR, it's worthwhile just understanding what these are, because as you start to look at your talent footprint, this vernacular is going to become more and more common, so it just gives people a generic understanding. So when people talk about, oh, you might need to set up an entity in that country, what they mean is to actually create a company, a physical company where you incorporate a business and you trade actually in that company, and that company might hire employees. You can engage employees on what's called an NRER status, where you register as a non-resident employer, which allows you to payroll workers and deduct the relevant taxes and pay it over to the authorities yourself. So you take on that admin, even though you've not fully committed to create an entity in that country. There's then the employer of record service, which we'll come on to shortly in a lot more detail. And then agents of record works very similar to an employer of record, but it's where you're looking to engage self-employed people, so independent contractors and freelancers, where you're not responsible for deducting employment taxes. And then particularly if we're focusing on the United States, then there's something which is called a PEO, professional employment organization, which again co-employs the worker and works with you to look after all the statutory responsibilities of engaging those workers. Now, on the framework that we're discussing today, Briars can provide these services for EOR, Employer of Record Services. So to help you understand that in a little bit more detail, if you could just click to the next slide, Stefan, that'd be great. So how does it work? What is an employer of record? Well, if you're looking to engage a worker, an overseas worker, then quite simply, we become the employer of that worker. We take care of all the statutory obligations of employment. We take care of the deduction of taxes, and we run that payroll for you, paying that over. So that completely removes the compliance, administration, and regulatory headache of needed to either set up an entity in each country or registering an NRER payroll in every country where you then take up that administration. So it's a partner service that we work with you. You still do the search and selection. You still find the right person. You still manage that worker. You still deploy them on the projects that you want, but we simply make sure all those relevant checks for their right to work are done, all the payroll calculations are done, and that gives you a great flexible way of trialing workers in different countries in a safe and compliant manner without having to take on the overhead. And we're quite aware that some people are visual learners as well. So here's a different way of explaining pretty much the same thing. So if we start at the bottom and work our way up, this doesn't change the working relationship with you as the worker. You will still treat them just as you would any other worker that you engage, whether they're in country or overseas. And that relationship is managed in the way that you want them to. Once you've found the right worker and you've sourced them, we then, as your employer of record partner, we vet that worker for the right to work, and we take care of all that regulatory setup for payroll. And then as the worker completes the work for you, we then simply use timesheet data to understand how often that individual is working, and then we run the payroll on your behalf. So the worker becomes an employee of ours, but is engaged by you and directed by you. So it's the benefit of both worlds. You get to move really quickly. The worker gets to have one relationship that manages their payroll, but you don't need to take on the administration for each country you may want to engage a different worker in. Now, when you start to think about a global strategy, there might be people watching this that say, well, I'm not sure we do have a global strategy, but sometimes it's done to you. And there's a video for this as well, which brings it to life that people may want to see that's on our website, but I'll just explain it now. So if we start at the bottom right-hand quadrant for HR services, this is a normal, typical scenario that happens. So somebody might engage our business and use a fractional HRD service because they need a little bit of support, either with M&A, building strategy, short-term maternity cover, whatever that scenario might be. And one of the services that we look at is the global workforce audit. So we look how they're engaging workers, where they're engaging workers. And in most circumstances, we then find that in today's world, there is a really sort of multifaceted workforce, a real collective mix of employees, temporary employees, fractional workers, gig workers, and all those different types of workforce potentially bring different risk into your organization if you're not managing to the relevant employment law and tax legislation that impacts it. And as we go through those different workers, we may help you decide that some of them should go through an employer of record service, just like we talked about before. And there might be a range of self-employed workers that have actually created a huge overhead for you in terms of a sort of purchase ledger requirement. So there might be an agent of record service that we can provide to you as well. And as we started to help put that workforce in the right buckets to make you more streamlined and compliant, there's then an overhead that comes with that. And in most countries, there are regulatory reporting requirements to make sure that you are engaging workers in the correct way. So we then take on those services as well, where we can report on all your off-payroll workers and make sure you're filing returns correctly relative to the country that you're engaging in. And then once we've done that sort of cleanup, then our solution then wraps around you going forward as well, that says every time that you hire a worker going forward, let us do a review to make sure you're engaging them in the most compliant manner that benefits you and keeps you safe, but also protects the worker as well.
Thank you, Andrew. As we said before, we are now an approved supplier on the NWUPC framework. This was awarded in mid-2025. So you can come to the Briars Group to service all of your EOR requirements, even if you're just looking for a little bit of advice, a little bit of guidance on the appropriate route forward. Please do come and give us a call, drop us an email, reach out to us, and we'll either be able to advise you on EOR services or point you in the right direction to look and keep your international workforce compliant.
Okay, so hopefully that was useful. As Stefan said, if anybody has any questions or comments, drop us an email, download the relevant guide, watch our videos. We're also happy to come and meet you and your sort of workforce staff and help you think through how the employer record service might be useful to you. So please get in touch. No obligation. We'd be happy to help you think through this global strategy and take the relevant steps to keeping you safe.